What does the Torah say about adoption? Now, whoa, you're probably thinking, like, how does this relate to our whole conversation about Christianity and Judaism and the Torah? And could Jesus have been the Messiah? But the truth is, it relates very much to it. And it's actually a really exciting discussion that I'm having with somebody. I presented the case that Jesus absolutely could not have been the Messiah because, despite what the New Testament says, it was absolutely impossible for him to have been from the Davidic line because biologically he had no father. And the Torah tells us that tribes go only according to the father. So a very nice woman who believes in the claims of Christianity, she challenged me saying, well, what about adoption? The genealogy that is related in the New Testament is that of Joseph, and Joseph adopted Jesus, and therefore he attained the tribal status from the Davidic line. Well, let me just pause and point out that there are two conflicting genealogies in the New Testament, and one of them definitely descends through the line of Jeconiah, who was cursed to never have a king come through him. But we're going to set that aside, and we're going to talk about the issue of adoption. Judaism definitely believes that adoption is a fantastic thing. If there's a child out there who needs parents, by all means, if a person has the ability to take care of that child, they definitely should. Now, that said, despite adoption being a wonderful thing, does it change the status of a child? Now, let me just give you a disclaimer. I have a close family member who was actually adopted. His family was not from the priestly line, and he was adopted into the priestly line. He is the only male in his adopted family who does not go up to the front of the synagogue during the holidays to give the priestly blessing. Why? Because biologically his DNA is just not that of the priestly line. Therefore, he is not permitted to duchen, as we say. But where do we see in the scripture that a person's biological father has a bearing on their tribal affiliation? Aside from in the book of Numbers, where it says this very specifically, we can look over in Leviticus chapter 24, where there's a story of an Israelite woman whose name was Shlemis Bas Dibri, who had a child who was born to her through an Egyptian man. Now, the verses there very specifically repeat again and again that this child was the child of an Israelite woman, and that he was a child of an Egyptian man. It says this multiple times in order that you should be aware that he was very specifically associated with the mother. Therefore, he had a Jewish status. However, he was tribeless. And in those verses, it relates to us that there was a quarrel in the camp. Now, the question is, what was the quarrel about? You see, the different tribes were divided into different camps. Each tribe had an area where the members of that tribe would pitch their tents. So along came this man who was biologically the child of a Jewish woman and an Egyptian man, and he said, hey, I belong in the tribe of Dan, where my mother comes from. And there was a Jewish man inside of the camp. He said, no, biologically you are not of the tribe of Dan, therefore you cannot pitch your tent here. This ended up resulting in a quarrel, and they took it to a court case. At the court case, it was legally decided that no, this man cannot pitch his tent among the tribes because he was not a part of the tribes biologically. The man became very upset and he blasphemed God. So does Judaism recognize the changing of a child's tribe when a child becomes adopted? No. The same thing is true of when somebody converts to Judaism. When somebody converts to Judaism, they take upon themselves the name Ben Avraham, the son of Abraham. Although he was an absolutely righteous person, he did not have a tribe because he was born before the tribes were assigned. It doesn't speak of anybody's status being lesser. It simply means that they have no tribal identity. So converts do not have a tribal identity, and children who are born from one tribe do not attain a different tribe when they are adopted. Let's illustrate this in another way. There's a very famous story in the Bible, which pretty much everybody knows, in which we see this very clearly illustrated, that adoption does not affect a person's genetical identity. You see, there was a little baby boy who was born in a time of extreme persecution, and his parents, who the Bible introduces as both being from the tribe of Levi, took this little child and put him into a basket and put him onto the Nile River. We're talking about Moses. Now, who found him? The daughter of Pharaoh. And Moses was raised in the palace of Pharaoh. The Bible very specifically says that he was the son to the daughter of Pharaoh. He was adopted in all sense of the word. And yet, Moses never lost his Jewish identity and he never lost his tribal identity. He is identified with the tribe of Levi throughout the entirety of the Bible. That's because no matter if one is adopted or not adopted, their DNA does not change. The DNA comes directly from their father and their mother, and the tribal identity comes from the father. A Jew will never stop being a Jew. A member of a tribe will never stop being a member of a tribe. And nothing that a person does can cause them to change tribes. I think everybody will agree that this story is a powerful illustration of this point. So that was a fantastic question, and unfortunately it just doesn't work according to the Torah. So no, Jesus still remains tribeless despite the brilliant idea that was offered. Up next, we're going to discuss the virgin birth. So stay tuned.